get started tonight. Remember, John and Annette do fly in Saturday, so, and our local association also is Friday night and Saturday morning, so remember that, if you will. And so with that in mind, let's go ahead and look to the Lord and seek His blessing on our time here tonight. Julian, open us in prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for everybody that's here today. I ask you just to lead upon prayer requests, continue to lead us and help us and heal us from the inside and out, and just give us opportunities to serve you. Go with us the rest of this day. May you just open our hearts and minds to the Word, and may you just let the message. May we just take the message and apply it in our daily lives, and just forgive me my sins and my shortcomings. I ask you for your precious name of prayer.
Amen. Amen. We haven't had Craig preach here in a while, so you want to read that 9th Psalm for us?
It says, I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will shew forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. I will sing praise to thy name, O thou most high. When mine enemies are turned back, they shall fall, perish at thy presence. For thou hast maintained my right and my cause. Thou settest in the throne, judging right. Thou hast rebuked the heathen. Thou hast destroyed the wicked. Thou hast put out their name forever and ever. O thou enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and thou hast destroyed cities, their memorial is perished with them. But the Lord shall endure forever. He hath prepared his throne for judgment. He shall judge the whole world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee. For thou, Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee. Sing praises to the Lord which dwelleth in Zion. Declare among the people his doings. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble. Have mercy upon me, O Lord. Consider my trouble, which I suffer of them that hate me, that thou liftest me up from the gates of death, that I may show forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in thy salvation. The heathen are sunk down in the pit, that they made in the net which they hid in their own foot taken. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Hagion, Selah. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail. Let the heathen be judged in thy sight. Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. Selah.
Now, just footwork here. It is believed, and you can take this for what it word. It is believed that Psalm 9 and 10 were originally just one psalm. The first part, the 9th Psalm, was the Psalm of praise, and the second part, Psalm 10, was a Psalm of lament. And so, because of what he had done and what he accomplished in the 9th Psalm, this lament and desire for what may be happening and should happen is talked about in the 10th Psalm. And so it's interesting. I don't think it impacts the thoughts and intents of that psalm. And so, but I just found it interesting. And so when the psalmist David starts this all out, he just opens this psalm of praise up with a direct intent to praise Yahweh. That is what he's looking to do, and he's praising him for the work that he's done. And so he's going to go in and recount God's deliverance that he exercised from the nations, and he's going to describe the fact that he is a just and a righteous ruler over the earth. And his praise for Yahweh, he's going to be praising him because he's remembered the afflicted. He hasn't just forgotten them and set them aside. And so then he's going to offer up a prayer, a petition in this remembrance. And then he's going to celebrate what Yahweh is ultimately going to do in judgment to the nations, or to the wicked, to those who have mistreated God's people, but more specifically who have ignored him or rejected Yahweh. And so, but there is a preservation element to what God has done, and so he's just going to conclude with that petition to Yahweh for him to judge the nations. And so, you know, when we look at this and we start to break it down, there's a lot that's really interesting in here. So let's see what we can break down and go from there. Verses 1 and 2. Got to do some shrinking here. Get that to where I can see it. Oh, quit it. If I make that any smaller, I'm not going to be able to read it. We get into verses 1 and 2. So when you have the righteous judge and how he is ultimately going to deal with the wicked, David rejoices. That's verses 1 and 2. David rejoices, and he just, I will praise you, O Lord. And so he gives thanks. And notice that phrase there where he gets down, I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. With my whole heart. I'm wholeheartedly going to give forth the praise to you for what you've done. And it is interesting that, remember, the heart, according to the Hebrew thought, represents the center of people's character and will. And so you're getting that. We're not just talking about a blood pumping organ within the body. He's expressing his intent to give thanks completely and wholly unto the Lord. And so that is a interesting structure that the Hebrews use in their writings and whatnot. And so he talks about all your wonderful deeds, right? All your marvelous and wonderful. He's just testifying to the wonders of God. And sometimes, you ever heard the phrase, the testimonials turned into braggamonies? You know, instead of being a testimony about God and his greatness, people start, bragging about what they've done for God, and almost like, boy, isn't God lucky that he's got me. And no, we'll always be the lucky ones in that regard, the blessed ones. And he goes on and he just says, I will be glad and rejoice in you. So he's giving thanks with his whole being. He just expressing thanks to God. And the reasoning for this thanks is the wonders of God, the things that God has done, and just how amazing, how marvelous those things are. And so he's just going to make sure, I want you to know, I'm going to exalt you. I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to give you the praise. I'm going to give you the credit. I'm going to give you the glory. And he ends that phrase there, I will sing praise to your name. So he's pretty much covered everything. I'm going to sing, I'm going to talk, I'm going to give it all to you. I'm going to hold nothing back from praising you. And that's David's introduction to this psalm, and it revolves around leading into a complete acknowledgement of the work of God, not only in his life, but in the life of the nations around about the children of Israel. And so that name there, he doesn't use Elohim there or Yahweh when he talks about God. This is Elyon, and it was used in reference to Melchizedek and his role as a high priest to Elyon, or Elyon, E-L-Y-O-N. You can have at it. That was an interesting thing about taking language lessons in 3 different seminaries. I can tell you for a fact that they all pronounce this different, depending upon where you're going to school at the time. And I can assure you, I probably pronounce these things different than most because I get stuck on the vowel pointings. And so most of the time, if you're not careful, you get the A for father mixed up with so you don't say father, you say father. So it's a more, anyway. Yeah. Look what you boys got to look forward to. And so, so he has that, and it says in Melchizedek, the king of Salem brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High, right? And that's there in Genesis 14:18. And so that's just kind of an interesting side note about that particular name being associated to God. Any thought or question there? Verses 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward, right? Any word associations or scriptures that come to thought or mind? I didn't tell you. Here's something else. Some say this is an acrostic psalm. So each line begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet in succession, but it's not a complete acrostic, so that's why some question whether it should be or not.
My heading for Psalms 9, he made me include, like you say, Psalms 10, that says, for the director of music, in the time of the death of the Son, is Psalm of David.
To the tune of the death of the Son. Mut Lebin. Labin. I didn't look to see. No, that's a long A, isn't it? Labin. And so, you know what's really, really interesting about that word? Absolutely, the overwhelming majority of everything I've read, nobody really has a firm grasp of what the intent behind that word is.
Which word?
Muth Labin. Quit it. Muth, M-U-T-H, Labin. Is the literal Hebrew word where it says death of the Son. See, the New King James and others translate that death of the Son. So some say, well, that was the tune that this was to be recited to, or that it could be some ladies that were to sing this tune in a certain manner, and so you want me to keep going? It's just like, okay, so we got a title, and it really for us is not super clear what the intent behind the title was. Now, some may be dogmatic in their, no, it means this. Okay, great. It's a notation to the choir director that this is how this is to be presented. Okay, so, and it doesn't mean pianissimo. And so, I get to heaven and we'll all know how to speak it. Somebody asked me once, well, what are we going to speak in heaven? You probably just speak what you're speaking right now, but you'll speak it perfectly, and everybody will. Oh, I wonder, will we have the gift of ears in heaven or the gift of tongues? Says we'll know and be known. That's interesting. Never thought about that. What do you think?
I would.
The gift of tongues or the gift of ears? Or are we all just going to
I
speak
think
Hebrew?
we'll go back to the way it started, and we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, yeah. Which is interesting.
Which is not Hebrew.
Boy, I don't think they spoke the King's English, so. But who knows? Oh, shucks. So verses 3 through 6. Go on then. Verses 3 through 6. We've got the reasoning behind why David rejoiced. I mean, these verses are going to lay it out for us. You know, the place and the role of the righteous judge, who is God Almighty. Excuse me. You look at that, and sitting on his throne, thou dost sit on the throne judging righteously. There, the latter part of verse 4. So he's sitting on his throne, so there's no doubt who's in charge. Right? You understand that? There's no doubt who's in charge. No doubt who's rendering judgment. You walk into a courtroom and the guy's sitting, or the gal's sitting on the bench. That's their court. They're in control, and that's just the way it is. So he's sitting on his throne, judging. But he does it how?
In righteousness.
In righteousness. He is a righteous judge. And so, and what is going to be, what do we think he's going to end up, what's part of what he's looking to accomplish in his judgment? What's it say he's going to do?
Destroy and blot out.
Yeah. He's going to rebuke the nations. He's going to destroy the wicked. I mean, and that thou hast blotted out their name forever and ever. That's something, isn't it? What do you think he's talking about?
There will be no record of their existence.
Yeah. Isn't that, man? David's talking about it on a personal level, and this is where I think we have to understand. This is personal to David, but there's also an application that goes beyond David. There's a general application to the fact that this is what happens to those who rebel against God. This is what happens to those who deny Him, reject Him, and turn their back on Him, and don't accept Him. All right? But David's thinking of something specific that has happened in his encounter here under the sun, so to speak. And so he's sharing that. And it's just the work in delivering him from the enemy nations that were around him and the enemies. He makes it clear that, man, they're just going to, look what he said. When my enemy turns back, they shall fall and perish at your presence. I mean, man, they're going to trip over themselves trying to get away. I was in this situation, and you intervened, and I mean, they turned around and hit retreat. and they tripped over their own feet. I find that to be an interesting phrase, how they just, God's going to rebuke them, and they're going to perish, and Brother Kevin, their memories, man, they're gone. They're perished. Remember them no more. And but remember, in punishing the enemy nations, he does it as an act of a righteous judge. And so it's
well, a thought comes to mind, the idea of the righteous judge. There's no argument about whatever he judges them. However, their punishment is, they can't argue.
And that's where, excuse me, that's where I think a lot of people, I get tired of the flippant way in which people talk about hell and about judgment, and even some of us as God's children, there is no arguing. And even the lost, when they stand in the presence of the Lord, it's like the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man, he didn't say, man, I'm here unjustly. It's not right that I'm here. No, could you send somebody to my family so they don't come here?
Yeah.
The lost know they are where they deserve to be because of their choice. It's not God's fault that anyone ends up in hell. Okay? And so, we're not going to be, there's no negotiating, there's no arguing, there's none of that. And so, yeah, that is just, he's there, he's going to judge the world. So that's an interesting word. That Hebrew verb for judgment appears 6 times in this psalm, and it has to do with one of the other reasons why David was praising him. Excuse me. And so that I like the word with equity. With equity. And again, that's how his judgment comes forth. It just describes the parallels that exist between righteousness and justice. And so I'm going to end up losing my voice. So what do we have with the destiny of the wicked? We've covered already. So they just turn back, they stumble, they perish, they get rebuked, they get destroyed, their names get blotted out. They come to an end in perpetual ruin, and their cities are uprooted. Nobody's going to be rebuilding them. They're gone. And the very memory of them is perished and wiped out for all time. So, thought or question about any of those verses 3 through 6.
Question for the difference between in the end of verse 5 where it says he blotted out their name forever and ever, and then in verse 6 where it says even the memories perished. Is he just going over it again, or is the blotted out more significant?
Look at that phrase, in perpetual ruins. And so even their cities are gone, and thou hast uprooted their cities. It's just, no, it's destroyed, it's gone. It's not going to be rebuilt or reestablished.
I guess my question would be, is the blotted out referencing to like the book of life compared to the memory would be earthly?
Well, here, let me throw an interesting little theological question at you. Thou hast blotted out their name forever and ever. How do I phrase this the right way? Are all names of everybody who's ever been and will ever be written down in the book, and then he just goes through and blots them out? Or in the book of life, is that only the names of those who have been saved? And however you look at that, then you have to realize, okay, so the blotted out here would not be referring to the book of life, because their name would have to be written in there in order for it to be blotted out or taken out.
Well, I think it's the book that Moses went it was Numbers 33, the book of the living.
So,
In other words, their life on earth is, it's like a baby. It's gone. And their memories, whatever accomplishments they had, they may have been the president of the United States, they may have had all kinds of glory in this life. There's nothing left to remember about it.
and that's,
It reminds me of the flood. The people that died, their memories are gone. Who remembers them?
isn't that sad?
It is, because they had every chance for 100 years to get in.
Gee,
The commentary in Rebuttal says complete annihilation.
I got myself worked up this afternoon thinking about the foolishness of man. I've been reading through Proverbs, and it was foolishness to reject and ignore God. And so it's like, but then we need to be so careful about what we say and how we respond. And it's like I told Julian and Christian, and I've told several others throughout the years, man, the only thing that matters is the truth. And listen to me, it doesn't matter, this will sound really weird coming from your pastor, it doesn't matter what I say apart from the Word of God. You understand? What matters is the Word of God. And people will tell you things, and people say, you've got friends or relatives who said, well, doesn't it say this in the Bible? Well, I believe the Bible, and you're like, you're just looking at them. I have said no to people more about things they want to attribute to God lately than I ever thought I'd have to. It's just like, what's even funner is to say, well, I'm not sure, where do you think that's found? Which particular book are we referring to here? You know, and so anyhow, anything else about verses 3 through 6? Okay, so then we get to the one being praised. Verses 7 through 10. But the Lord shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment. He shall judge the world in righteousness. And so it says, he shall shelter, I like it, but the Lord abides forever. What do you get from that phrase? When you think about that phrase, what does that phrase say to you? But the Lord abides forever.
He's eternal.
Okay. Now remember what he just got through talking about, right?
It's contrasting between the temporary nature of all these other nations and people and everything else, and who God is. You compare to that.
His works and glory will be forever.
I like how one author put it when he talked about He can shelter believers. He shelters and watches over believers, and we should not fear because he abides forever. His promises will never fade away, and it just, that's a comforting phrase. And so he has established his throne for judgment. He will judge the righteous. He will judge the world righteous. He will execute judgment for the people with equity. That Hebrew word there, with equity. Again, that integrity. And that's so important, that integrity, the integrous nature and character of God, that there's just no arguing with it. He has no ulterior motive. He doesn't have a manipulative motive. He's not underhanded or sneaky or devious or deceptive about who he is and what he stands for. And so I like how one said it. So the Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed. A stronghold, refuge, a stronghold. So one author said the psalmist describes Yahweh as a place of refuge. A place of refuge. And that word there is a word that describes a high wall or a rocky fortress. And so when it's applied to God, what he's doing there, when this word is applied to God, it's just emphasizing the stability of his protective presence in providing for the needs of the oppressed, providing for the needs of those who aren't being well treated or well thought of or well taken care of. And so a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know thy name will put their trust in thee, for thou, O Lord, hast not forsaken those who seek thee. He's not turning his back on, he's not giving up on, he's not forsaking those who have put their faith and trust in him. So,
well, when you look at the contrast we just went through, what comes, or the thought that just came to me in the middle of stages, but what can man do to me? Man's memory is going away, but God's eternal God life. His refuge is eternal. That safety net is always there. We might become aggravated at what man does to us. We might be disappointed, discouraged, whatever it might be. But in reality, it's all going away. The blessed hope is God is eternal.
And again, it gets down to something I already mentioned there, what is the responsibility of man in this? What does he say there at the end that makes it clear that the responsibility for man is to trust him and seek him? You need to trust him, you need to seek him, and it may not be that the world treats you the way that you think you should be treated, doesn't recognize, how important or valuable or amazing you are, or it just may be that you get treated badly, and the Lord will take care of that. He is a stronghold that we can depend upon. That's why David goes into more praise and prayer there, verses 11 through 16. Any question about 7 through 10? Um, 11 through 16 then, the response is, our response when we think about the fact that he is our stronghold, he is our refuge, he's going to take care of us and watch out for us and provide for us, is praise. It should result in sing praise to the Lord, right? Sing praise to the Lord who dwell in Zion. And then you want a good testimonial? Declare among the people his deeds. That's the best testimony you can give. It is to declare what God has done in your life, what he is doing. And those are the kind of testimonials, those are the kind of statements of information that you provide to people that can help them make a connection to why they need God. You know, what God's done in my life, he can do in yours. The God that saved me is the same God that wants to save you. The God that delivered me from the penalty and the consequences of death and hell wants to deliver you from the penalty and the consequences of death and hell. The sin that I've committed was paid for on the cross by Christ. Guess what? Your sins were too. See, it's all a matter of keeping, how did the preacher say it, you know, keep the main thing, and don't major in the minors. And sometimes we get caught up in things that, so you praise him for delivering the afflicted. I mean, he remembers the plight of the afflicted. It says, for who requires blood remembers them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Behold my afflictions from those who hate me. God doesn't forget. He hears. He knows what's going on. And he's gracious to deliver us. That's why David goes on, be gracious to me, O Lord. Thou hast lifted me up from the gates of death. I'm going to throw a couple gates in here, right? But you delivered me from the gates of death. And so David just said, it's one of the reasons why you need to praise him. You need to remember what he's done and what he's doing and what he's going to do. And as a result, you should praise him for that. You should thank him and lift up his name and tell people all about it. He talks about that need for praise when he turns around again and says, that I may tell of all thy praises, that in the gates of the daughter of Zion, I may rejoice in thy salvation. You know, David was also the one that in his one of his penal psalms said, restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, right? And he was the one that realized that I messed up and I want you to. And I know it's a word play, but you need to. A lot of people say restore to me the joy of my salvation. That's not what he says. He says, restore to me the joy of thy salvation. And so the joy that I experienced when I understood that you delivered me, that you saved me. You can't save yourself. All right? If you saved yourself, if it's your salvation, you're in trouble. If it's God's salvation, you got it made. And there's a huge difference there. And that's one of those things that I talk about. People misquote that and misapply that. And that's why I say truth matters. The little details there, you know, and make sure you got the right possessive pronoun when you're talking about some of these things. And if it's not about him, then somebody's in trouble. So I'll let that rabbit get away. I like the nations have sunk down in the pit which they have made. When they got caught in their own trap. They just, I don't know why I found that humorous, but in the net which they hid their own, man, they tripped over their own trap. They got caught in their own snare. I don't care how you want to say it. They messed up. And they did it to themselves. They have no one to blame but themselves for what befalls them. And the Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. That's what God's doing. In the work of his own hands, the wicked is snared. And so it's like, you better watch what you say, you better watch what you do, you better realize who it is that you may be rejecting, who it is that you may be mocking, slandering, blaspheming. I mean, my goodness. And so anything there in 11 through 16. You're all determined to get this song done tonight, so I appreciate that. So verses 17 through 20, he gives a summation in a prayer, right? You want to know what happens to the wicked? Again, the wicked shall be turned into hell. The wicked will return to Sheol, the place of the dead. You know, I just caught myself. Oh, shucks. That's interesting. I gotta do some more studying there, Brother Todd. We'll go on. Verse 18, he talks about the destiny there of the afflicted, how that we're remembered by God, for the needy will not always be forgotten, nor the hope of the afflicted perish forever. And so then as a result of that, he offers up that final statement, "Arise, O Lord, do not let man prevail." This is final prayer, right? Let the nations be judged before thee. Put them in fear, O Lord. Let the nations know that they are but men. He's God. He's high and lifted up, and we're not. So when you look at that psalm, what are some of the wonders that David can be testifying about, or that David could testify about?
Probably many of the triumphs that he had in the war.
Okay.
When they fell.
Giving God the credit for that too.
Yeah.
What else?
All the times when he was afflicted, Saul was after him, other
Yeah.
enemies in his own household at times.
Sitting there, and whether it's Saul or whether it's Absalom, you know, it's like God watched over him.
Oh, but he sinned with Bathsheba. God forgave him.
Some disagree with me, and that's okay. I think the taking of that first child was a gracious and merciful act on the part of God. It's due. But anyway, we can talk about that later if you want to talk to me about it. But it's like God's grace and mercy. So sending Nathan to confront David as opposed to just slapping him down. I mean, he committed adultery and he was an accessory to murder. He said, well, he didn't kill anybody. He sure did. He made sure that Nathan got,
What's his name? Uriah.
say it again.
Uriah.
Uriah was put up at the front of the battle. Thank you. Right? He knew where he was sending it. He knew where he wanted him to go. And so it's like, yeah. And they should,
Well, I think in Nathan's going to him, had David responded differently, definitely different results.
yeah. So, you know, we talk about David, we talk about biblical situations. Do you have any, do you have any moments or memories that you can look back upon and, that was God blessing, that was God intervening, that was God working? Because if all we do is spend our time looking at the experiences of others and never equating the activity of God to anything that's going on in our life, that would say more about my relationship with Him than God's inactivity around me. And so, when's the last thing that you can think back and just go, man, that was amazing. That was, man, why did God intervene, that God stepped in and we've been praying about a lot of things for the last year or so. And just some of the things that just like, they're just amazing. God's gracious. God's not being overly morbid or whatever. Craig's still here.
Amen.
I was going to say, good. Thanks. Throw that in there. I was hoping somebody felt that way. But it's like, man, it's like, you're just not going to convince me that God just didn't step in there.
Well, referring to the child that we lost, and the doctor saying if the child had survived, it would be probably mentally disfigured. So I see God intervening in that aspect.
And not to be insensitive, did you know that, and this is a reflection of anything other than, I'm going to use it to prove a point that I've tried to make to you guys about things. I think sometimes God intervenes in a way that He understands us and what we can or can't handle, what we can or can't deal with, and it's like with Charles, trying to get him to understand. One of the first visits I made up there, Brother Kevin was with me, and we're both thinking the same thing. Don't beat yourself up. Don't you can't live in the past. And it's like, but I don't think none of us is going to be here any longer than God wants us here.
Amen.
And none of us are going to go any sooner than God wants us to.
Amen.
And so you had your car accident. And God's like, not yet. Yeah, I'll watch over you. And you say, well, how is God watching over you? Not yet. I got something I want you to do. Right? And it's like, that could have ended so much differently. But, and so, like I was telling Charles, it's like, don't underestimate what God may or may not do in this situation based upon what I can handle. I was being selfish. God knows what I can and can't handle, and He knows when I can or can handle it, and when I can't. And so God sometimes answers prayers for our benefit based upon the people around us. I know that some of you that may not fit with whatever you think, but I'm just saying, it's like, I mean, Craig's still here. Julian's still here. Right? Mike had you scared, but you're still here. Right? And it's just like, and ain't none of you holding a candle on what Tom went through. I mean, gee whiz. It's just amazing. Seriously, you're still here. You know? We have an amazing God. And I think He loves us and does things and intervenes in things in such a way that sometimes we don't recognize it or acknowledge it or give Him credit for it. And that's kind of a David set this example with this psalm of, you need to be praising Him. You need to be thanking Him and lifting Him up and exalting Him. And you need to be telling others about what it is that He has done and is doing and is going to do. And so it's just like, I mean, you just think of those special memories. And why do we have memories? Most of you who've been to our home, you understand that we have a shelf of memories in our living room, right? They're called photo albums. And my wife has kept and sorted, and why? They're memories. We have videos, they're memories, right? Some of you have souvenirs from different places. Why? They're memories. We like certain memories. Some memories we just as soon forget. But it's like, so we do all of this. I mean, so you think of all the memories, and it's already been touched on, but you think of all the memories that have been created by all the people on this earth that nobody, and I think the flood was an excellent one, thinking of that. It's just like, we don't know anything about all those people who died during the flood, except the fact that they died because they didn't believe God. And it's like, and yeah, man, to die and to have not lived in a way that brings honor and glory, you know, it just kind of, you know, the tripping and the stumbling and the getting caught in their own traps and falling in their own pit. That's why some people say, you know, you know what the golden rule is: what goes around comes around. Well, I didn't know that was a golden rule, but anyhow. Any thought on any of these verses or anything you want to add? Priscilla.
You were talking about some of the big things that we've seen God work in, but I think He works, you know, around us every single day, and we don't even think about all the times that He intervenes for us. And if we can get to where we see more of His working around us, I think we'd be a lot more grateful and a lot more content.
It's not that God's not working around me. It's that a lot of times I'm just not looking for it. Amen. Not paying attention. Anything else? Any praises, answers to prayer requests? Anybody wants to share with us tonight? When was that youth rally?
30th.
The what?
The
30th? Okay. I gave that to Julian and Christian, and you may have to go. You may just have to go and check it out, you know. But there may be one or two that might, you know, want to go and do that. just what we need. You and Jason sitting on the back row cutting out. You'll have to sit between them.
I told him to go up here, probably.
Marie.
Craig's skin graft surgery was just scheduled today for October 23rd.
Was it? So that's,
Yay. Exciting. Get a set of steak knives after this one.
sometimes I'm really glad I don't hear. All I caught was steak knives.
He says he gets a set of steak knives after this surgery.
Okay. So you said October 23rd? You give me a set of Ginsus?
I've got a set of good cigars.
You know, if God works it out and opens up the door of possibility, I will probably go up to Oregon in November for my mom's 90th birthday. So my sister's trying to put together something to get everybody there. So I probably ought to make an appearance. Unless if one of you objects, I won't go. But of course, I will give your name and number to my sister.
Men's and ladies meeting next third Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I guess, yeah, they were saying something about that Sunday. And then, not this weekend, but next weekend, our ladies have invited the other ladies to come and whatnot, and so, remember that. Did you see I put another letter or something in your box? I think I did.
I didn't see, I'll check.
Okay.
The ladies are meeting Saturday to put things together for
This coming Saturday? Okay.
at 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock. I'm gonna be in Clovis, so you guys have fun. I think my wife's gonna be there with me, so of course I could just leave you home. Anything else? If not, let's say together with the Lord. Dismiss an order of prayer. Let's pray for the dissipation of the ragweed, because it's messing with me like crazy. The dogwood, ragweed, and every other kind of allergen that's floating around out there now.
Remember Janet Lazier in Carrier? She's going to start chemotherapy and radiation.
Now you've shared that before. That
Well, initially it was, it was cleared up and no, they weren't going to do anything. The oncologist called her and said, no, we need to get on this right now. So she's got to go back.
And that's who again?
Janet Lazier.
Janet. That's Gary's and Janet.
Yeah.
That's Batman's wife. If there's nothing else, Phil, dismiss us, please.
Father, thank you for this time that we could learn from your word, going through the psalm, Lord, and seeing the experiences that David has, and also the things that he had to say about you and relationship to the rest of the world. Pray that we might learn from these things, Lord. Be with all the prayer requests. There's so many burdens on the hearts of your people tonight, Lord, and a lot of need that's going around. You know each and every one of them. And I have the confidence to know that you're going to meet those according to your will. Ask you to just go with us for homes, bring us back again. Thank you for the blessings of life. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.